designer has one of the clusters formed in the manner that they would like, the next command that they may want to run is to replicate that circuit. This command will actually take this source cluster, and the next thing that the designer is asked is to select a scope. You can either manually select parts within the design, or you can actually come over to the options panel. In this case, we're going to actually say to look at all the parts in the design. We're going to use the equivalent match algorithm. We're also going to enable partial match, which says that this cluster has 41 components, but if I can only find 35 components in a resulting cluster, go ahead and place those 35. And I can also choose to create symbols for the unmatched. So if there are 35 out of 41, we could actually place placeholder parts in the other 6 positions. We also have a couple fixed components in the design. So I'm going to ask that these clusters be formed relative to those fixed parts. And then I'll send it off to the engine for processing. When the command is completed, you'll see a batch control panel open up, and this is where you would apply your results from. The resulting clusters, I'll go ahead and apply this. The resulting clusters will be formed below the board edge that are related to the fixed components in the design. The clusters that actually had fixed components, you'll see that the clusters were actually formed relative to how that master part was oriented. So even though the source cluster was in this form, these other clusters were placed relative to the fixed master part, or the fixed part in the cluster. In this particular circuit, the master part was mirrored to the bottom side, so the cluster was applied to the bottom side of the board in an inverted fashion. So now if I actually move this, if I move the source cluster down and turn on the rat's nest for all the other clusters, you'll see that all the other clusters have been formed exactly like the source cluster that was identified. Even the ones that have different orientations. Same time that we do the replication, we create an association between all these clusters. This allows us to process ECOs for future revisions. So now if I were to make placement changes to any one of these clusters or routing changes, I could make those changes and propagate those changes to the other clusters. And this is the replicate command within CircuitSpace.